Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for joining again. We're continuing on Pandemic Projects, which has just celebrated 1 year since the first outbreak in our area. So wow, it's really been a long struggle. Thank you to all who have been helping us overcome the day-to-day issues involved in the virus and pandemic and keeping us safe. That includes our hospital workers and medical staff, our first responders, EMTs, our fire and law enforcement and the like. It really is appreciated, everything you do to keep us safe. We've been doing these pandemic projects to kind of take our mind off of it and also show you how certain reels are made and how to service them and how to get them out there fishing again. And fishing during the pandemic has really increased in popularity because it's one of those things you can do outside and socially distanced and kind of away from the pack, if you will. And a lot of folks have regained a love of it and are going fishing and need to keep their reels serviced or get them serviced again because it may be some time since they've fished. Well, today we're going to work on another one of these smaller frame lever drag reels. This one is a Canyon reel, and this one is a Canyon HS15. I'm assuming the HS is for high speed, and it is. It's a 6.1 to 1 retrieve. It says it holds 450 yards of 40-pound braid, and as we've talked before, these small chassis high-speed reels have really done away with those large international class lever drag reels, or even the ones like we've worked on recently, the Penn Squall 40 and the Okuma Titus and the like, and they've been replaced because braid is thinner and stronger than the traditional amount of filament, so you can get, in this case, 450 yards of braid on what is kind of a very small frame. So let's get started. We're going to take apart the reel and show you how it's made, and we're going to service it. So we're going to do that by removing the exterior parts first. That includes the tie down screw and the hold down clamp for this handle. It's the hold down clamp. This is a good time to explain a couple of things that I do during the video. I wear protective gloves to try and keep the grease out of off my hands. I use a little parts tray, bottom of a milk jug, to store all my pieces and parts that I take off. And I take pictures. And the pictures I'm taking here happen to be a video, but I recommend you take pictures, whether it's on a cell phone, a traditional digital camera. Go ahead and take a video if you want. And just keeps you aware of how the pieces and parts came off the reel, and then when you go to reassemble, you know exactly where they are. And here's an example. There's a very fine washer here, very thin, kind of hard to see, that goes between the handle and the first bearing in the case here. So just know that they go there so that when you go to reinstall, that you can take them off. Speaking of taking off, we're going to take that preset knob off. When I take the preset knob off, I like to move this all the way over to free spool, and then I can see the orientation of that lever so that when I go to reinstall, I kind of have a benchmark. So this one comes with a spring inside that preset cap, and then we have we should have a little bit of a ramp in the back here. I guess it's yeah, it would be inside here. We're just going to leave that as it is. And now we have 3 of these, I believe they're Torx screws, could be Allen screws. I have a multi-bit set. I just went through my set finding the right one. And I have a little palm driver. I like this one because you can rotate the axle shaft on this. You don't have to keep turning the handle set to remove those screws. While I take them off, I'm going to put them in a separate area in my parts tray. That way, if there's a screw here that's not the same size, I'm going to be able to identify it so that when I go to reinstall, I'll make sure that I put it back in the right order. Right now, both of those screws are the same size, and there's one more of these. And typically, this side plate is under a little bit of pressure because the way they make the lever drags, there's a spring that controls the tension. And sometimes that spring will push open the side part of the rail here. All right, 3 screws are out. That should be all there is. I'm just going to check. I don't see the screws in the back here, so we should be able to remove it at this point, and we sure did. And here's why you do an annual tune-up. It looks like we have some grease in there. The grease is fairly congealed, and it's time just to clean that up, to refresh the bearings, and to move on with that. Very simple design here. We don't even have a hold-down plate with this spool. But we do have to remove, I'm just seeing, we do have to remove this little shield that goes on the back. It seems to be tripping into the path of the spool there. These are very small screws, so that's another example why you want to use that parts tray, because those little screws tend to land on a desk just like that, bounce, and then get brushed off to the side as you're working on other things. All right, notice the orientation on that. I'm going to put that face down so that I know to reinsole. Now we should be able to remove the spool. And in the back, traditional of a lever drag reel, there's nothing going on back there. Happens to be a little grease there. You don't have to grease it because nothing spins back there. It's only a tie down for this this back end here. So let's see what we can do on this. We should be able to remove your gear and your pressure plate. That frees up a bearing and a spring. Those should be separate, they are. And then we should be able to push our rod assembly through, and then I'm going to use the rod to push the other bearing through. So this is your setup. I'm going to remove that bearing as well. And there's one more bearing in the case here that once we remove the main gear, there's a bearing below and a bearing in here that need to be serviced as well. So I'm just going to use the penetrating oil. This is the local Ace Hardware variety, and by the fog there it seems like I'm just about running out of that stuff. So I have to go get myself another can of that. I don't play favorites with the penetrating oils. I think they're all kind of the same. Some chemist out there can probably tell me the differences between Liquid Wrench and WD-40 and the store variety here of Ace Hardware or anything else. Just making sure those bearings are nice and evenly flowing. They are. I'm just going to, I'm actually going to use an oil here that I haven't used before. Dennis from North Carolina sent it in. This is Lucas Oil Products, Inc., and it's fishing reel oil. And Dennis asked me to give it a try, so we will. Let's see if that just opens that up or if you have to clip something here. He likes the applicator. Boy, I like the applicator too. Somebody had asked me on the pen, isn't that kind of interesting that they put that sort of an applicator on their oil chute? And it is. It's painful. And so I like this. I like the way it fits in the palm of my hand. There's a little spout here. I'm going to have to look at that more closely when it's time to reorder my oils. I have been using Real-X as well, and Real-X has a nicer applicator on it as well. Some of you may have seen those, but that's your traditional clip. But I like the applicator idea. I don't know the difference on the oils, but it says fishing reel oil, and that's always been what I've said should be done. Is I don't care which oil you use, but use fishing reel oil. We're going to put that bearing back on here. We can put that through our spool now. There's nothing in the spool cavities here. You don't have to go pulling anything out of there. This should be the this is the bearing for the spool. This is a Carbon-Tex washer in here, and I'm told by the folks that do this kind of thing that you shouldn't be oiling or greasing a Carbon-Tex washer. They do tell me that if you do find that it is clogged, and in this case this one's clean, but they said that you can take soapy water and a scrub brush and just kind of knock out what might be in the grooves there. And again, in this case I don't see anything there, so I'm going to leave that as is. Next up is a bearing, and this bearing has a little collar on it. I'm assuming that's going to hold the spring. So we're going to go back in with that bearing, get that seated. The plate is clean, so you don't need to do anything there. That bearing will sit in this cavity. Make sure that cavity is clean. And we've oiled those, so we don't need to do anything more there. So you can see these reels are pretty straightforward, and I kind of appreciate the simplicity of the lever drag reels. For some reason, I think maybe it was in the past with the size of them, folks got a little intimidated working on them. But in this case, to me, they're about the simplest things around, and they work. And to me, the less moving parts, the better. And less moving parts, the less you have to worry about breaking. So I'm using fishing reel grease now. I'm using Penn Precision reel grease. We're going to grease up the pinion gear. And it looks like that's stamped right onto the pressure plate. It doesn't even look like that one comes off. So we'll go ahead and put that back on. We're going to seat the spool back in the reel case here. And as is typical, that usually traps with the reinstall. Pull that through. As I've mentioned before, I don't generally like working on reel with lines, but I'm not going to tell the customer that to take it off. For all I know, they re-spooled it recently, and in that case I would agree with them that it is no sense to do that, but I do recommend that you replace your fishing line annually. And to me, fishing line is cheap, and it sure beats the story of the one that got away because they broke off the line, and the reason that they broke off the line was that it was old line. I've cleaned off the main gear. I've checked all the teeth. There's nothing going on in those teeth. You also want to check to make sure that they're not chipped or cracked. Now, I did do a little pre-test on this reel before we started taking it apart and started the video. It's been working fairly smooth, so I have no reason to believe that there's any issues in terms of broken parts. But if you're not sure, you want to test all of these. You want to make sure that you have the teeth and the like without any kind of harm or disruption. All right, this simply goes back into the main gear. We could put a little on that last collar there. It's going to slide inside the bearing. That goes inside the main gear. Comes out the other side here. I didn't oil that bearing on the front end, so let's go ahead and do that. And Dennis, I'm liking your little product here. So we've got that in place, but before we can install that, we want to take that shield and put that back on. So let's go find those screw holes for that. And we can get those two little screws, and boy, this is the painful part of my existence. These little screws are just hard on me. But in this case, it looks like we'll survive. So if you're having any questions about this, you can go out to the site and get the exploded view of this in a schematic. I didn't do that here, but I do believe you can find the Canyon schematics out on the internet. And if you get lost along the way and you didn't take your pictures and you're stumbling a little bit, always go to the internet and try and find the schematics for these. They will be helpful in terms of orientations on pieces and parts. And I just got a little bit of grease on here. Go ahead and clean that off. All right, this should be simple enough. Just kind of put that back over the top. And then, as I mentioned, you have a spring, so you got to push down as you go to snap this in place. And we have those three side plate screws. And this sequence really doesn't matter too much. I say normally I like to balance them out, but this is triangular, so the second screw really doesn't matter which one you put in next. Probably would have mattered if I put it on top, but that's okay. Normally you want to make sure that you're not binding anything in the case. And those cases tend to be graphite cases like the one I just worked on with the Okuma Titus reel. And in that case, you don't want to go in a circular pattern when you reinstall. You want to go kind of northeast, southwest directionally to keep the torsion on the case even as you put all of these in, particularly when they're spring-loaded like this. All right, we got that done. while we have the pieces and parts off, I'm going to clean the reel. I'm going to use a pen rod and reel cleaner. And I find that that does good in terms of taking fish scales and old grease and the like off. And it's pretty simple, and it puts a shine on it in the end, so I've come to use that. And again, I'm not paid by anybody to tell you anything about rod reels and greases and the like. It just kind of happens to be what I've found works, and as a result I tend to pass that along. There was a washer on the bottom here that goes on to the shaft before we do that. And we started this off, but I don't know if changing the spool is going to change that. We'll see. So let's just see if we can't put that back on. So this is what I was talking about inside. You have a ramp and a recess, and you want to work yourself to where that ramp and that recess are in the off position. So you want the indents here, and I believe that word is detents there. You want those lined up so that they sit down as far as they can inside the piece. All right, we've got the preset, so let's go ahead and put that on. And then we'll see if we have to move the orientation on that lever at all, or if we've kind of got it right. So we're going to spin now. That should be in the off mode, and you should not have the main gear turning here. We've got that. As you go to first strike, you should see it turning, or you don't have it adjusted enough. Okay, we see it turning now. Now if we come back here, we should be in free spool, and we are. So we have this properly set. Going to my parts tray then is that little washer that we talked about that goes over the bearing before the handle. So get that seated properly. Grab that handle now. And Rich, you're going to kill me, but I didn't make a note as to which one came off. So I'm going to put this in the lower position, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. You'll have to switch that out. You should note, and actually I'm seeing it here, so in the light I see that there was a cap indentation there, so we're going to put it on the way it was. But that's where taking a picture would be helpful. Now, of course, you're probably doing this reel yourself. You're probably not doing it as a commercial service, but you would know which one you favor in terms of the position of the handle, if you want full leverage or not. And of course, you could reset it yourself. In this case, I personally do remember now, because as I went to take the handle off, there wasn't any extension there. All right, just tighten that down. Let's grab that hold fast clamp. Make sure that you're lined up with the hole in the piece. And we just have one more little screw here. As I mentioned, me and little screws don't get along. But let's see if we can get this one in. And we can. So it's ultimately the time for the test now. So we're in free spool. These are nice casting reels. I know there's a lot of folks that like to run jigs and that. This is a nice casting reel for that. So we're in free spool. First strike is there, and we have the handle turning. There's not much drag going on there, so I'm going to tighten it down just a little bit more. And then full strike, you shouldn't be able to move the handle, and you can, so let's go tighten it even more now. There you go. So we're tightened up now in terms of this, the reel. Free spool, first strike, yeah, that's probably got about half the drag now. Full strike, you can still use a little bit more. There we go, now we're locked down. All right. So it just takes a little bit of playing. You're going to know, if it's your reel, you're going to know where you like the first strike to be. That's typically when you've got the fish on, but he's starting to run and you want to leave a little bit of line out there. And then the second strike is when you're ready to do business. You're bringing it in and you're not giving that fish any play in terms of the ability to take that line out. So we've learned a couple of things today. We've learned how the Canyon High Speed 15 comes along. We learned that there are alternate fishing reel products out there. In this case, this is Lucas Oil Products fishing reel oil. Those of you that watch drag racing, NHRA and the like, see Lucas advertised all the time as motor oils and the like. And we learned that they do make a fishing reel product, and we're going to try that out. And we'll make sure that we let you know more as more becomes available in terms of how it stands up to the test of time. But right now, I'm confident that that's certainly an acceptable reel oil to go use. So if you enjoy this, please subscribe, and if you want to see more like this, please hit the notification button. That way you're going to see all of the videos I posted. Earlier on, I did mention I'm trying to post daily as a kind of my own sort of commitment to help folks along during the pandemic. If you like the video, please like it. If you have questions on this reel or any reel in particular, if you're working on a reel and you're stuck, for example, go ahead and leave those questions in the comments section. I do try to reply to all. And finally, if you have a reel that needs to be serviced and you're not up for that repair or that servicing, I do reel repair by mail, and leave me a note on the email from the business card that follows, and I'll be happy to provide you with that repair information. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thanks for watching.